Welcome to twoquestions.tv. With me today is David Essel, and we're talking about positive thinking and action. Welcome to twoquestions.tv. I'm Susan Baroncini-Moe. Joining me today is David Essel. He's the best-selling author of 9 books, a counselor and master life coach and inspirational speaker, whose work is endorsed by celebrities like Jenny McCarthy, Wayne Dyer, the great Wayne Dyer, Kenny Loggins, and Mark Victor Hansen, also the great. He's also the author of this book, Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life, but this book will. Hi, David. Welcome to the show.
Susan, so awesome to be with you. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I dedicated the book to Wayne Dyer, the late Wayne Dyer now, because of an amazing impact he had on me the first time I interviewed him in 1990, 91. He was such a sweetheart that I said, even though he passed on, I'm going to dedicate the book to him because he had that much of an impact on my life.
Oh, I just think he was such a good man. And honestly, like, I remember the first time I heard his voice on one of those audio cassettes. And that was so transformative for me. Yeah. Major influence. Huge. Yeah. And you know what? And he's a guy that overcame huge challenges in life. A nicotine addiction, cocaine addiction, alcohol addiction. I mean, this guy really went through the ringer, and it wasn't. And here we go right into the this concept. I mean, he didn't positively think his way through this crap, Susan. Right. Well, and so let me tell you this. I loved your book because so much of what you said resonated with what I've been telling my clients for years and what I put in my book. And I felt like I was reading the book of a kindred spirit. I just loved it.
Very nice. Very nice.
So in the book, you talk about the relationship between positive thought and action. And what's really interesting is you make it super clear that you're not saying positive thought is bad. So what is the role for our viewers who haven't yet gotten their copy? What's the role of positive thought and how does that interplay with action?
Well, the full title of the book is Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life, but this book will. We're very confident, right? And then the subtitle is The Myth of Positive Thinking, the Reality of Success. Right. So throughout the book, and I'm so glad you brought this point up, we say to people, listen, I'm still one of the most positive thinkers in the world.
Clearly.
I went through, a very long period of time where I was parroting many of my gurus and talking about the law of attraction before we had a word for it called the law of attraction. And I would say, whatever you think about, you bring about, and whatever you want to desire and to achieve, just implant it in your brain and it'll happen. And then in 1996, I tell the story in the book of how my life was radically changed by one of the most inspirational, deep, educational, if you want to use the word, either educator, teacher, or guru, they're all the same thing. Right. The founder of Transcendental Meditation, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Interesting.
So here's this guy that created this massive movement for meditation. Obviously, meditation is all about the brain, right?
Right.
And he is outing me, Susan, on my affirmations are BS.
Yeah.
And he did it in such a loving, kind way that I didn't even know he was doing it for me. Like, that's how sweet that guy was. And here was my affirmation that I write about in the book. And this is it. You could interject anything. You could say, I am a millionaire. I have a size 6 body when we're a size 18. You can say, I'm with my soulmate. You can make up any kind of crap you want with your affirmation. It's not changing your life. And I have proof. So my affirmation for over 20 years was, I am David Essel, a child of God, happy, healthy, and sober today. And sitting here right now with you, Susan, on your show as a counselor and a speaker and an author and a radio host and a TV and blah, 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 blah. I was a raging alcoholic.
Oh, no. Hello, integrity.
I know, right? And from 1980 until 1996, I was traveling the world 40 weeks a year as a speaker, doing counseling and coaching when I was home, radically changing people's lives. I mean, let me tell you something. As a highly functioning alcoholic, you can still do good stuff. Sure. But I was lying to myself. And here's the most important thing that we put in the book. All of the well-meaning books, The Secrets, The Law of Attractions, and all that kind of stuff, they are 20% accurate.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They are 20%. 20% of what they say is true. 80% is nonsense. You don't bring about what you think about. You don't have checks flying in the mail to you because you're imagining checks coming in the mail. You know, all that kind of crap nonsense. You know, and so what we say is, look at, don't drop positive thinking. And in our opinion, that what we stated in the book, Susan, is the first hour of every day is the most crucial time for affirmations, gratitude journaling, you know, meditation, prayer, whatever you're into. Right? Like that's where you want to set your brain, because with positive thinking, there's a cascade of chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, that race through. Now, this is scientifically proven stuff. We talk about heartmath.org in the book, right? So there's a benefit. It's this much, but there is a benefit to having positive thoughts if it moves you to action.
And take advantage of it.
And you have to take advantage. That's why we say do it first thing in the morning, right? Get your butt moving for the day. But if you're, you know, and in the book, we also tell a story of someone who I have the utmost of respect for, Dr. Joe Vitale. Dr. Joe was one of the stars of The Secret. You know, you imagine checks coming in the mail, they must. So I had him on my show a number of years ago, and I go, hey, Joe, look at me. I love you, dude. You know, I think you rock.
All right, Joe.
but we got to have a come to Jesus talk here, you know, and do you really believe that you became a millionaire, from homeless to a millionaire, by imagining checks coming in the mail and having positive thoughts? And oh, Susan, he started laughing. He goes, David, well, they left out part of the story. I go, I bet they did. And the part of the story that we write about in the book is that they left out that he worked 7 days a week, 12-hour days to become a millionaire. Now, did he affirm every day that he was going to become a millionaire? Yes, he did affirm it. But that's not what's going to make you a millionaire, or have you lose weight, or have you meet your soulmate. But if any of that were to happen, Susan, we call that a miracle. We stated in the book, if you follow these teachings and you do sit down and imagine a $1 million check in the mail, and this coming Friday it comes in, oh my God, be blessed. But that's called a miracle, okay?
Wouldn't that be nice?
I know, right? And you know, and then we also give statistics. You know, if it was so easy that whatever you think about, you bring about, why is 70% of Americans very overweight or obese? Because a lot of those people in 2007, when these books came out, they've been affirming. They have vision boards with them at a size 6, okay? And they're a size 18. And it ain't changed nothing. So, you know, and so we say, if that stuff was really true, another statistic we give, you know, like if it was true that you could radically increase your income via your thoughts, well, 20 years ago, 4% of the United States of America made $250,000 a year or more. Okay, only 4% of Americans. Last year, 4% of Americans made $250,000 a year or more. Okay, so it's not working. It's not working. And our book is about reality. And and the reason we did it was because I was so sick and tired of having clients come in and say, would you please teach me the right way to affirm my $1 million salary? Now, let me make something else, Susan, and you know all these stats I'm throwing at you, but here's something really fascinating. If you're going to make $1 million a year, that means you are earning $80,000 a month. Okay. Now, for all of your viewers, look in the mirror and you tell yourself, if you think you have the tools to earn $80,000 a month, do you think you have the gift? Do you think you have the drive? Do you earn 80,000? That's 20,000 a week, gang. Okay. Now, if you're ludicrous or you're Beyonce or you're, you know, someone like that, well, then you do have probably the gifts and talents, but you're still going to have to work your butt off to make it happen. But you know, so when we say, we have people, Susan, saying, I am earning $1 million a year, I go, oh God, gag me with a fork, not a spoon, a fork. I want blood coming out of my— That's aggressive. Yes, I'm very aggressive when it comes to this, because it's ludicrous, not the singer. It's absolutely ludicrous to think that we can do it. But can I make one more mention out of the book? Okay. Go for it. So what we explain in the book from a psychological, because I come from psychology, so we explain psychologically why it's so attractive. Why was The Secret so attractive? And why was the law of attraction still so attractive? Why are lottery tickets so attractive? Why is Susan, what's her name? The Thigh Master, you know,
Suzanne Summers.
Suzanne Summers. You know, why? I mean, the Thigh Master is not going to give you Suzanne Summers legs, for God's sake, but it still sells millions of copies. Okay,
it's fun.
And it's wishful thinking. And so there's something in 1996 we created.
Yeah.
And the definition is this: human nature. Our human nature is the desire to get the most out of life with minimal effort.
Yeah.
So if you're a really good marketing company, you're going to come up with a book that says that you can attract checks in the mail without doing anything. And you're going to market right into the heart and soul of every person in this world that wants to have a lot of stuff without doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Well, one thing I thought that was really interesting in the book was this idea of facing the dark side. And I thought that was something so profound that a lot of books don't talk about. A lot of books will throw strategies and here, try this and do that and action, action, action. Okay, great. But the idea of facing the dark side and acceptance was, to me, something I haven't seen in another book. So talk a little bit about why it's so important that we do face our dark sides.
You know, there was a book that came out a number of years ago, and it was called Know Your Strengths. And the whole purpose of the book was stay away from your weaknesses and just keep making your strengths stronger. And if you can afford people to do your weaknesses, do that, because then you'll have more time to make your strengths stronger. Okay, now, on the surface, it sounds really good. But then I look at someone like Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all times. If Michael Jordan didn't work on his weaknesses, his dark side, his inability to dribble equally effectively with both hands, if he didn't become a defensive stopper, if he didn't improve his jump shot, if he didn't constantly improve, he never would have been called possibly the greatest basketball player of all times. He had to go into his weaknesses. He had to go into his dark side in order for him to maximize his potential in life. You and I, when we're faced with our addictions and we open the doorway and look in the mirror and say, I'm incredibly dependent on this sugar every night, or this alcohol, or this nicotine, and nicotine is either vaping or cigarette smoking. It's all the same stuff.
Right.
You know,
or phone, TV.
Exactly. Oh my God. You know, Steven Spielberg not too long ago in an article said the saddest thing in the world to him is walking through airports and never making eye contact with anyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's the addiction to the phone. You're right, Susan. You know, and so our dark side is, and then the dark side can go into relationships. You know, we want to point the finger and say, you know, I've just chosen dogs for men. I've just chosen exploitive women, you know, but instead in the dark side, we say, what is your role? Because you are the only common denominator in all your failed relationships. So what is your, that's the dark side, you know, admitting that we're depressed, admitting that we're anxious. You know, I write about a story in there about a woman who was a great friend of mine who had cancer, and she tried to use the world of positive thinking to avoid doing the hard work. And she could have lived, you know, but she was relying on affirmations and all this stuff from well-meaning people and her dark side was her fear of getting real and looking. And so our dark side could be that we spend too much money, you know, that we have no control over our expenses. Our dark side could be that we are extremely intolerant to people that don't have our political or social views. You know, like the dark side to us, Susan, is the key to freedom. And when I look at my life and facing my addiction to alcohol, facing my addiction to cocaine, facing my addiction to codependency and intimate relationships, you know, I was the most codependent man this counselor had ever worked with. Like when she told me that one day, you know, and she said, oh my God, David, you know, your relationships are filled with turmoil because you are by far the most codependent man I've ever worked with.
Wow.
This was in 1997, Susan, you know, and I'm sitting there going, what the hell is codependency? You know, and I'm a counselor and we weren't trained on codependency. That was after I got out of school that it became famous, you know? So I spent a complete year with this woman looking at the fact that I wanted to find women to save.
Yeah.
I wanted to find women to rescue because I knew what to do. I had the money to help them. I had the brains to help them. I had the motivation to help them. And at first, every woman I selected was so grateful to be with David Essel, the savior, you know, I mean, right? But then what happens is that I and anyone else in my situation, man or woman, we expect something back from our greatness, okay?
Yeah.
And then they become resentful that we want something back from how we're helping them. And then it turns into hell and chaos and drama. And I wanted to, at that time, look at it and say, I'm just choosing bad woman. I'm just choosing incorrect women for me. And that's like the classic line. It's like, hell no, let's look in the mirror at your dark side. Are you staying with people too long who have really unhealthy habits? Well, then you're an enabler, right? Are you choosing people that need to be saved? Are you the girl that looks for the bad boys because they've never been loved the way you can love them? They've never been understood the way you can understand them, right? And then they blast you out and they have an affair with your best friend and you're all, ticked off at the bad boys now, but you go back after them because, you're a Mother Teresa in drag, So the dark side is scary, but in that chapter, we talk about why it's so crucial to go in it. And, I would recommend, Susan, that people not go into their dark side on their own. Like, don't become a self-help junkie where you're self-diagnosing your narcissism or your whatever, go work with a professional because your self-diagnosis is probably going to be wrong because of the subconscious brain. And we talk about the difference of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind in huge detail in the book too.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And there's so much we could unpack here, but I understand your next book is like the follow-up on steroids.
Oh my gosh. So we have the book that we're talking about today, right?
Yeah.
We got this one, Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life. Very good. I love it. Then this is the one that just came out. Focus, Slay Your Goals, and then underneath it is the proven guide to huge success, a powerful attitude, and profound love.
And you're coming back to talk about that one.
Oh, I can't wait. The foreword was written by celebrity Jenny McCarthy. She wrote the foreword to the book. And I can tell you the story of my first interview with her when I thought she was going to throw me out of the studio because she loved The Secret and the Law of Attraction.
Yeah.
And then she gave me 3 minutes to explain this first book that we're talking about today.
Oh, no.
And at the end of the 3 minutes, she turns to the audience and she says, Susan, oh my God, I was wrong.
What?
David Essel is the new leader of the positive thinking movement. Like she did it right on, and 3 million Sirius XM listeners. Nice. Oh, powerful stuff,
Yeah. And so they can get a free, our viewers and listeners, because I don't know if you know, this is also a podcast.
Oh, awesome.
So our viewers and listeners can get a free preview of the next book, which we're going to talk about in our next interview at talkdavid.com.
Yeah, that's true. And actually both books, they can get a free preview of the positive thinking book that we're talking today. And then the focus book, they can get previews of both. And
no, we want them to use the links in the show notes to buy your book, David. Buy the book.
I love it. Thank you, Susan. Amen to you, girl.
So viewers and listeners, if you want to just get a taste of the book, fine. But really, it's a book you need to read. So buy the book. Yeah.
And it's, and we say this when I even wrote this in the foreword to Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life. When I came out with it, we knew everyone who works with me, we have a staff of 10, said, you know what, this book is either going to go through the roof for you or you're going to be working somewhere else in a different profession.
Come on, you knew how that was going to go. You knew it was going to go well.
We knew it. And I think it was at the 8th month mark, it hit #1 bestseller, in 8 months, which is unheard of. And so we all took a big breath and laughed and said, okay, now we're going to write another one since this one hit so hard. But the book you and I are talking about today is really the way to begin, because we do go into so much detail about belief systems and the two sides of the mind. And as you mentioned, and I really appreciate you talking about the dark side. A lot of people don't want to, but that's where freedom exists. That's where your highest level of self resides. And when you can go after that dark side of the selfishness, the self-centeredness, the gossip, the anxiety that you've never dealt with, the depression, how we self-medicate, when we can look at the dark side, a whole new, I promise you, the most amazing world opens up, a world that none of us ever thought was there until we walked down those steps.
It's extraordinary. It's really, really extraordinary what happens when you, I think a lot of people have the idea that if you accept where you are right now, you're not going to grow beyond that. And that's not true. Accepting where you are today means you can grow beyond it.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, it's exactly true. When I went to a treatment center for alcoholism, I was in this, the detox tank, and they called it the fishbowl for 3 days. Just, they monitor you 24/7 and making sure you're not going to go into convulsions and all that stuff. And then as I am walking into general population after you get out of that, I'm walking across this campus, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Are you David Essel?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Father Ron wants to see you right away." I said, "Who the heck's Father Ron?" "He's our spiritual director." Okay. So I went over and I knocked on the door, and this kind of a gruff voice says, "Come in." And I walked in, and I said, "Father Ron?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "David Essel." He goes, "I know who you are." I said, "Okay." And I go to pull up a chair. He goes, "Don't bother sitting down. You're not going to be here that long." I said, "Okay, now Susan, I'm just fresh out of detox. My brain is scrambled. That's still, And then he said to me, we're talking about the dark side right now. He said to me, "Essel, I have a meeting with you tomorrow at 2:30. We have an hour and a half that I'm going to be spending with you. I know you're a minister. I know you're an author. I know you're a counselor and a coach and all that other kind of stuff. That's very, really good. But I want to ask you one question. Why are you in a treatment center?"
Dun, dun, dun.
And so, but Susan, here's the subconscious mind covering up the truth and the dark side. So my very first response was to learn how to drink moderately.
Wrong.
Now, just imagine where that thought's coming from. That's not a conscious thought. You're in a freaking treatment center for 30 days because you're an alcoholic, right? Yeah. That's a subconscious reaction, like quick. And he looked at me, he said, "Try again." Yeah. And so I said, "Okay, to get on a medication where I won't crave alcohol." And he's looking at the ground. He's looking around. He goes, "Essel, I'm going to give you one more shot." And I said, "To get sober?" And he goes, "Oh my Lord, I thought we'd never get there." And then he says to me this, he said, "Listen, I got you tomorrow at 2:30. I want you to do this. We have a track outside. I know you're into fitness. Go walk or run the track for a couple hours. And I want you to come in tomorrow and tell me what it's going to take for you to get clean and sober for the rest of your life." He said, "Because I don't believe that once an alcoholic is always an alcoholic. I believe if you really want to put in the work, you can be sober for the rest of your life." So I left. I come back the next day, Susan, and I go to sit down, and I'm nervous now because this guy, he's from Brooklyn. He's he doesn't dick around, he's like in your face. And so he goes, "You got it." Like I sit down, he looks at my face, he said, "You got it." I said, "Father Ron, I do." He said, what's the answer? And I said, "I have to fully surrender and do whatever is asked of me in the world of recovery and surrender myself, my life to God at a higher level than I ever have, and I'll never crave again." And I had tears telling him that, Susan, because it was the deepest I had ever gone in my life. I thought I had been deep before,
Right.
The next 30 days some of them were very difficult, but they were some of the most incredibly blessed. I learned so much. Father Ron ended up taking me and this other guy underneath his wing, and he took us out into the community to these really intense meetings that we never would have gotten in the rehab center. Mm-hmm. And it furthered my understanding to help others that when I was willing to go into the dark side and look at him and say, I need to get sober. No more justification, rationalization, denial. I can moderately drink. I'll just switch. I switched my whole life trying to drink moderately. It never worked. When I went into the reality, and for our viewers and listeners, for you, it might be sugar, it might be nicotine, it might be alcohol, it might be drugs, it might be, it could be it could be television, it could be 1,000 different things. Susan, you mentioned television, I think before. Mm-hmm. It could be your phones. Whatever you're willing to say, I am dependent and highly addicted to, that's the dark side, and that's where freedom starts.
Yeah. But again, as you said, it's not really recommended to explore that on your own, which leads me to the other thing that you mentioned to me earlier, which I thought was very generous. You're willing to spend 15 minutes with anybody watching the show, listening to the show right now.
Yeah, like, this is a jumpstart counseling session, man, and we love doing these,
Who would say no?
I know, right? Like, you get 15 minutes where we can rock and roll. All you do is go to talkdavid.com, send an email saying, hey, I was watching David on Susan's show, and I want to have my jumpstart 15-minute phone counseling session, and they take over the rest. And then pretty soon, you and I are going to be together helping you to jumpstart where you are right now to get to where you want to be. It's a blast.
Awesome. Wonderful. Such a generous offer. So viewers, listeners, take advantage of that. It's there for you. And we'll have the link in the show notes for today. David, thank you so much for being on the show. I love your energy.
Oh, Susan, this was a blast. And we will continue to rock together. And when you grab the book Focus and we get into that one, honey, we're going to have even more to talk about.
I can't wait.
And thank you for the passion that you bring and the preparation. You said something earlier, and it's true. This is our 10th book. We do media tours all the time, and about 2 to 3% of hosts actually read a book.
Oh.
It's and you obviously read it to be able to talk about the things that you and I went into, and that is really super appreciated by me and your audience.
Thank you. That's what I do. I just love to read, and I love to learn from such wise individuals and such experts. And the truth is, the show is designed to help people, but there's a part of it that's super selfish. It means I get to read all the time. And I love it. So
very cool.
So thank you again for being on this show.
Oh, I loved it, Susan. You have a great day.
You too. All right, viewers, here's the book. Again, the link to Amazon so you can get your copy will be in the show notes for today. So get your book. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.